Howdy, folks. We'll be starting the webinar soon. If I can just do a quick sound check. If anybody who can hear me, if you can find the chat tool or better yet, the Q&A tool, and let me know, that would be appreciated.
We can hear you, Ted.
Terrific. Thanks for that confirmation. We'll be starting in a few minutes, folks. We've still got people coming into the webinar room. Bear with us. And if you haven't used the Zoom software before, I encourage you to find the Q&A tool in the Zoom software. And you can use that throughout the session to ask any questions you like. I just realized my video wasn't on. I think I fixed that. All right, so we'll be starting soon. All right, let's get into it. Good morning for those of you where it's morning, as it is here in Sydney, Australia. Good afternoon and evening for the Americans. And I guess, well, for anyone dialed in from Europe or the Middle East, it's quite light there. But let's dive in. So today we're going to be talking about agents. I think for several of you, you've been to previous webinars, and so we'll still have some good content for you. For the newcomers, welcome. We do this pretty regularly. I'll explain in a second. Let me finish. Okay, thanks for filling in the poll, those that did. Just having a look. Okay, got it. So we've got some customers here. We've got people who've been to previous events. We've got some people who are using AI but not agents. And let me just have a quick look at some of the things you said you're interested in learning about. Okay, I see Andrew Jetson. G'day, Andrew. Yep. Okay, cool. Let's dive in then. So, for those of you who know me, I'm Ken. For those who don't, who am I and why should you listen to me? Well, on the last point, it's entirely up to you if you think you should listen to me. My background is all computer software, right? And one of the sort of key concepts we'll be covering today is that AI is just computer software. It's fancy, non-deterministic, amazing computer software that seems like magic, but it's just computer software. So my background is, excuse me, apart from a very brief stint where I was a lawyer for the US government, I've spent my entire career running software companies, latterly in private equity, sort of buying and selling software companies. So, excuse me, I built two startups in California, the second one of which, first one did well, second one did very, very well as an enterprise software company with 200 employees around the world. We were a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader, so recognized as the best in the world at what we did, beating out folks like Microsoft, IBM, and Amazon, who you may have heard of. And I sold that to private equity in 2019. I then went and worked as a partner at a private equity firm. The fund I was in, we bought 8 software companies. We've sold 6 so far. It's one of the best performing private equity funds in the history of Earth. So not just in tech and software, but across all private equity funds. Actually, the second most performant fund ever. But at my heart, I'm a big old nerd. I'm a builder. I love software. I've been coding since I was 13. I've been being paid for it since I was 15. And as I've gotten older and, gotten more grey hair, I moved into being a CEO and then, sort of private equity investor. And now I'm back into being a CEO. But I've been in more board meetings than I can count, dealt with more professional investors than I can count, including my colleagues at potential where I used to work. So that's the background, right? I've done some stuff. And these days I'm just 100% focused on AI, including these webinars that we do, which are, we're trying to do them one a week. We've been mostly doing that, but going forward we will be. Why do we do these sessions? Number one is awareness, right? I truly believe there is such epically destructive and transformative change coming to the global economy around AI that I feel obligated to talk about it, share what I think is coming, share what I know is coming, and those are different things. So I can help you navigate all of that change and hopefully be at the forefront of that change and this sort of wave of disruption that is already here with us. Second thing is keeping you informed, right? Me and my team, we live and breathe this. And so several of my team are on here today, and if you reach out to us afterwards, you'll meet some of them. But we live and breathe this stuff. There are announcements every day that we track, and some of them are important. I would say there are medium-sized developments every week and major developments every month. It's impossible for civilians to keep up with all of that. So if you've been to a previous webinar, you'll generally pick up new things in these sessions going forward. I was reflecting on this last night. 60 minutes is a great show for somebody who only wants to watch the news weekly. Catch up on all the major things, get some deep analysis. The Economist is a great magazine for people who only want to read the news weekly. Same thing. So this is a little bit like that. That's a bit of a grandiose comparison. Third thing is mindset shift, right? So what we are arguing for and what we are trying to help people achieve is a shift away from this algorithm we've used for 500 years, which is, the first people who wrote about management theory. We're talking 500 years ago. Machiavelli being one of the first and most famous. But we've used this approach of we have a problem, we have an opportunity. Who is the human we're going to use to solve the problem or prosecute the opportunity? And that's been the way we've gotten things done for 500 years. And that's changing. It's changing already, and you should be changing your thinking around this, which to a new model, which is really at the heart of what an AI operating model prescribes. And it's instead of who's the human we trust to tackle the problem or the opportunity. It becomes, what AI and technology can we throw at this problem or this opportunity? And if the answer is none, great, we fall back to human. But more and more and more, the answer is going to be a hybrid solution, human and AI, right? A cyborg solution, if you will. I want to get you excited about all the cool things you can do with AI and how it can materially improve your job and your life. And for some people, job and life are synonymous. For others, they're distinct. But I also want to scare you a bit, mainly because fear can be a very useful motivator. And I think it's appropriate to be a little bit scared about what all of this means for our profession, our job, and our career and our future. And then lastly, some practical stuff. So we're actually going to jump in, we're going to build agents, we're going to play with agents, we're going to see things in action. Today's presentation will be shorter than normal for those who've been here before, and we'll be more on the practical. So let's talk about AI agents. The best way to know what leaders are really thinking when it comes to AI is not to listen to what they say, except for one man, Dario Modi. We'll come to that, but actually to look at what they're doing. And this is a smattering of headlines from the Wall Street Journal, including this one over here, which was from last week, that best documents, what CEOs, boards, and owners are thinking about, AI. And not for nothing, private equity, the industry I was in for a very long time, now owns 25% of the companies that employ Americans. So 25% of Americans actually work for private equity at this point, right? So the private equity view on this is pretty darn important. But there has been this enormous disconnect between what these leaders say in public and what they say in private and what they've planned to do. So, recently Jack Dorsey came out, and Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, now runs Block, which was formerly called Square. He recently announced he was firing 40% of his humans and replacing them with AI agents. He didn't do it yet, right? He just announced it, and his stock popped 30% overnight. That's dramatic, right? Because that is Wall Street rewarding a public company CEO for making that announcement. And I bet you dollars to donuts, you're going to see far more frequent announcements like that, because the plans have already been in place. They've just been in secret. And other CEOs will have tracked that market signal. But look at this chart from the Wall Street Journal last week. This is tracking number of announced layoffs in the technology sector. So this is Amazon and Microsoft and Google, etc. Block would fall into this. Q1 of this year jumped to 80,000 humans, right? Now, we also read all the articles about how they're spending so much money on AI. Well, the two are correlated, okay? And we're going to talk about sort of this later, about what it means for the programming profession and IT and others. But you are now starting to see the AI impact on employment numbers in the US economy. And where America goes, the rest of the world generally goes, a couple of years later. Here's a quote from Mark Benioff from last year, bragging about how they reduced their support costs by 17% by rolling out AI agents in their CS function. Now, I used to pay Salesforce an ungodly amount of money. I was a long-time user. I'm a shareholder, and I'm thrilled about this from several different perspectives. Number one, Salesforce is a dog of a product to use. It's powerful, but it's horrible. A bit like SharePoint in that regard. So yes, AI agents for customer support, great. And by the way, AI agents do better customer support than 99% of human customer support reps. But the bigger factor here is that 17% in that function at Salesforce is hundreds of millions of dollars worth of saving. And he didn't say that here, but his CFO did say it in the subsequent earnings call. And that's the reason this is a beautiful vignette, is that AI agents at Salesforce give customers a better experience, because good support agents crush human support agents, A. So customers are better off. B, the company saves hundreds of millions of dollars. And so C, the shareholders are thrilled, right? It's win-win-win. The only people this is bad for are the humans that were working in the Philippines and India in those CS functions. And for them, it's not as nice a story, is it? But let's unpack the belief set that's going into decisions like that, right? On the left here, we've got the belief set about human employees, and on the right, the belief set about AI agents. And I stress the word belief. You don't have to agree with what's on this slide, although I do. But you do have to know that this is what CEOs and owners and investors are thinking, boards, right? So since the 1920s, 100 years ago, humans work a 40-hour work week. That becomes standard. 48 weeks a year. Now, that's all theoretical, as any employer knows, but let's go with that, right? So 1,900 hours a year. Let's compare that to AI agents. Remember that an AI agent costs about 5% as much as the equivalent human. So let's say it's only 10%. So let's say I'm paying 90% less. The AI agent works 168 hours a week. What is that number? It's 24/7. We normally see it as 24/7, but that's actually 168. And they work 52 weeks a year. So that's 8,736 hours in a year. It's 4.5 times as many hours of labor as the human for 90% less. Just think about that for a second. I can pay a human, say, $1 to do some work, or I can pay another thing 10 cents to do 4 times as much work. Well, that's immediately got my attention, hasn't it? All right. And so let me go to point number 2, which is humans, perform at different levels of peak productivity. A terrific human employee might be amazing 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week, but they're not the rest of the week. Us humans are variable in our sort of intellectual capacity and productivity. With AI agents, that's not true. They are consistently good or consistently bad. And if you set them up right, they're now consistently good. No peaks and troughs. So the economics of these first 2 vectors are just staggering, and you can't ignore them. Humans come with drama. They come with words like overtime. They can often be a liability, right? Humans are prone to errors. AI agents, by contrast, they don't come with any drama, no words like overtime or sick leave. And if you set them up with sort of the right tools and rules, they will make mistakes as well, but they'll only ever make a mistake once. That's it. And that's true of a fleet of agents, right? If I've got 30 employees and they each make mistakes, usually the same human employees will make the mistake multiple times. If they keep doing it, you fire them. But in general, you're going to see that same mistake pattern across every new body you bring into that function, right? And you're repeating it, playing whack-a-mole. With AI agents, I've got a great AI agent, makes a mistake. Okay, cool. I change its rules. Now it never makes the mistake again. And then I can press a button and have 30 of them. So it's not just that one AI agent learns, it's that one AI agent can then be replicated, and my entire swarm of AI agents never makes that mistake again. That is staggeringly powerful as an employer or a leader, right? And then the 5th point here, great employees are hard to find. Terrific employees are not born naked and screaming into this world being amazing at whatever, data analysis and visualization. They train, they develop skills, and then some boss develops them, right? It's a collaborative effort between the employee and the employer to create a terrific employee. And often just when you get them great, they go on to greener pastures, right? I used to have Google and Amazon and Microsoft trying to poach my best engineers all the time. Proud to say that we generally always won that battle, but it was a constant battle. And with AI agents, that's just not true. The AI agent becomes intellectual property that your business owns, right? You become a small, like a little tech company. AI agents will not quit on you. They're scalable, saleable assets within your company, which is extraordinarily powerful. Let me just have a sip. So let's pause a little bit and zoom out, right? Let's talk about what the heck is an agent. A lot of people saying last year is going to be the year of agents. A lot of people saying this year's the year of agents. I think this year's becoming the year of agents, but I think more importantly, the 20s is the decade of agents, right? The 1920s was the decade of motor vehicles and, sort of the go-go scene in America. The 2020s is the year of agents. He's an AI agent, Agent Smith, played by Hugo Weaving, an Aussie boy, for those who don't know. But let's unpack what an agent actually is. And headline comment is, there is no consensus in the computer science and AI community about what is an agent. But it's some combination of these things, right? An AI model, and these are not things like that you've heard of, like it's not ChatGPT or Claude, right? Those are dumb consumer agent wrappers around an AI model. AI models have names like GPT 5.4, Claude Sonnet 4.6, right? And that all that thing does is complete sentences, right? So if I say to you all, Mary had a little lamb, right? And everybody here would have been able to finish that sentence for me. That is all an AI model does under the hood. It's got a probabilistic sort of model where it's sort of card counting, and it knows what the super high probability answer is for the next word in the sentence. That's all it does. You got to wrap that with a lot of other technology to make that useful. And so other things that make an agent are tools. So the ability to do stuff, send an email, edit a database, this sort of thing. Context optimizer, fancy speak for find stuff, right? Search the web, search your database, search through files. A loop, an agent keeps going until it's achieved its objective, right? Short-term memory, AI models don't actually remember anything at all, right? All it can do is finish a sentence. Mary had a little lamb. I should have paused there. So you've got to scaffold that with a lot of stuff, including memory, to make it useful. And then recently, skills have developed. This is sort of a new thing. This has become, I think, synonymous with, proper agentic systems now. And so what does it mean for you? Imagine your own version of ChatGPT that knows every single thing that is written down about you on the internet, on your hard disk drive, in your files. That also knows everything about your business and your work, knows every single thing that is inside your CRM, so Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever, and knows every bit of information that your finance department's produced in the last 5 years. That is what we're here to talk about today. That's a proper enterprise agentic system. All right, that's what Sapience is. And so this point number 3 here is pretty critical. A good AI agent, an enterprise agent, can do anything you can do at a computer. It can't touch grass, it can't fix your plumbing, but if you can do it at a computer, a good enterprise AI agent can. And so with Sapience, I can send Sapience an email. Sapience can listen to voicemails. I don't know if you guys could see it, but when I look at the list of participants for this webinar, one of them is Sapience. She's listening right now and keeping notes. She can search the internet faster than any human. She can search every bit of information that my company has in a file instantly. Like, it's insane. And she's available 24/7. Yes, she's a she. She's actually going to speak back. We'll see this later. And so it's like having a team of employees awake constantly, available through all the modalities you normally use: email, voicemail, live conversation, chat conversation, right? Yeah, it's incredible. So at InfraScale, 200 employees, and they're around the globe. So there's always an employee awake, and I don't sleep much, and I'm a workaholic. So I'll often be chatting with employees at 3 a.m. But of course, variable human performance, right? Couldn't necessarily always talk to the person I needed to talk to because they were asleep. And in this new world of agentic AI, that's just not true anymore. 90% of what I need to get done, I can do with Sapience at my beck and call. And then this last one, good AI agents can reason, plan, and act. They can delegate to other AI agents. They can delegate to humans. There's now a website where AI agents can hire humans to do things for them, like deliver a package or things that an AI agent can't do because agents can't touch grass. Agents work autonomously. They pursue goals. So, like anything, there's good agents and bad agents, right? A bad agent is ChatGPT. A bad agent is anything built on Copilot. A bad agent is Claude or Gemini in a browser. These, the big 3 consumer chatbots are just that. They're consumer chatbots. They're toys. They're not designed for serious work. They're not what we're here talking about. A good agent meets these 13 criteria, and there are very few systems out there that do it. Sapience does, which is why I actually end up demoing a lot of these concepts in Sapience, because Sapience is a real-world version of stuff that is, that the other vendors have on their roadmap. But a good agent never hallucinates, never makes things up, always gives citations and sources to where it got its data from, is task-specific and a master of that thing, is faster, cheaper, and now often better than the human competition, the human equivalent solution. We talked about scalability, number 5. Number 6, collaborates well with other humans, right? If you've never done AI group chat, multiple humans and some AI, it's incredible, right? Good agents can orchestrate other bits, so they can work with traditional technology. They can orchestrate other agents. We've talked about these, and work autonomously and on a schedule. So the way one of my best workflows with Sapience is I wake up in the morning and all of this work has been done for me by groups of agents throughout the night. I queue up a bunch of stuff before I sign off. And in some cases, they'll work all through the night. And I wake up it takes me an hour just to review all of the work that was done while I was sleeping, right? And for me, it's deja vu, because that's how my company used to run, but it was humans. And now it's agents at 5 to 10% of the cost and better quality. It's nuts. Now, there is this thing called needle in a haystack, and agents are not infallible, right? There's a knowledge cap. So the knowledge cap today sits at about 20 million words or 50,000 pages. But let me visualize for you what 50,000 pages looks like. Here's me. For those who've met me, I'm a big guy. 50,000 pages is a stack of paper more than 3 times my height. I'm 6 foot tall. So picture one of your tall friends. Imagine a stack of paper taller than 3 of them stacked vertically, right? That's what a single AI agent can handle. And as you'll see in Sapience, out of the box, it comes with about 30 AI agents, and you can just build your own. So yes, there are limits, but they're sort of the limits are now so big they don't matter. Good AI agents work in teams, just like humans, right? So we'll see this later, but when using ChatGPT, you're just using ChatGPT. When you're using a proper agentic system, an agent will say, "Oh, I'm going to phone a friend for this," right? And so, what a seemingly simple query like this one, write me a report on sustainable excellence practices, This is a real life case study, right? So Sapience produced this 30-page footnoted annotated report that our client sold to their client for 10,000 euros. And it cost about 10 euros to run on Sapience. And under the hood, it had used 6 different agents in a swarm. And the output was just like that. They didn't edit anything. It was crazy. And so that's why we sort of did this case study on it. So what does this mean for work? Well, first answer is we don't know yet, right? There's different benchmarks out there that help us measure the goodness of agentic systems. The one I prefer is represented here, which is based on this concept of economically valuable work, economic value index. So what this study did was take work performed by elite practitioners in each of these categories, right? So for legal, it's going to be corporate structuring, or it's going to be like intellectual property protection. And they pitted top-end agentic systems versus top-end human practitioners. And the blue shows where the agentic systems performed. So you can see in a whole bunch of fields now, the agentic systems are as good as, or nearly as good as the elite practitioners, and as good as senior practitioners, and crushes intermediates and juniors. Now, remembering that AI today is the worst it will ever be, this is pretty, well, depends, exciting or terrifying, depending on your point of view. But the red is where the real story is. The red is the current adoption by human teams around the world. So in coding, you've got almost 40% of the professionals using AI tools. Cool. In legal, you've got about 20%, right? Far less. In life and social sciences, you've only got about 5 or 6%, right? So you're going to see these red bars shoot out, and you're going to see the blue cover every category they can do. Now, I like to say AI agents can't touch grass, and have been saying that well before this study came out. But if you look here, grounds maintenance is at 0% blue, which I find very, very amusing. So what does this mean for work? Well, here's a different framework, right? If you take two concepts of sort of human work that is sensitive to errors or not, right? And that's the y-axis here, versus human work that AI is good at or not. And we just saw AI is now good at many, many, many things. But in this framework, brain surgery is up the top left. AI is not good at brain surgery, and this is high sensitivity work. Please don't make a mistake, Mr. Brain Surgeon. That job is fine. Enterprise agentic systems do not represent any sort of threat or encroachment on that job. But if we go to the other end of the spectrum and go to things like marketing, copywriting, or SEO optimization, those industries are gone. They used to employ hundreds of thousands of people. Non-standard accounting, so sort of creative and strategic accounting is okay. It's up there. But most coding, AI just smashes the humans. Same with most legal, even though we saw that human lawyers are slow to adopt. Medical research, AI outperforms humans. Financial modeling and analysis, AI outperforms humans. 2 months ago, there was this storm on Wall Street because Citibank, JP Morgan, a bunch of other banks, memos were leaked showing that 400,000 analysts are going to lose their job in the next 12 months. Right now, these people all went to Harvard, Yale. They're some of the most elite professionals on earth working on Wall Street in Manhattan, and yet their jobs can be done better by AI now. And Wall Street firms don't muck around. They're dealing with billions of dollars. They don't do that because the AI sucks. They do that because the AI gives them an edge. And so I always get comments when I speak at real world events, physical events, from senior pros who are frankly offended by my presentation and come up and tell me AI can't do their job. And for those people, I just point them at this study, and they might be right. But what this study did was New England Journal of Medicine and Microsoft teamed up. New England Journal of Medicine had these 304 medical cases that were the most difficult medical cases of disease, pathology in history. And there were 21 human doctors, right, from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, Harvard, the best in America. And that makes them the best in the world. And they're a team of diagnosticians, right? So this test was a team of AI agents versus a team of real human diagnosticians. And if you've seen the TV show House, it's about this very thing. Dr. House is a diagnostician. He has this great team. He's modeled on Sherlock Holmes. He always cracks the case. So he always gets the diagnosis right. But that is not what happened in this study. In this study, the human team got the diagnosis right only 20% of the time. Now, note this point here. This is an old study. This is 2024. So this is using old AI technology, right? Like a full generation of model ago. Nevertheless, the team of AI agents, which was really well architected in a sort of team of agents approach with terrific tools and skills, had an 85% success rate. Now, if you were really sick, do you want the team that's going to get your diagnosis right? Let me do it a different way. Do you want the team that's going to get your diagnosis right wrong 4 times out of 5? Because that's the humans. Or do you want the team that's only going to get it wrong, 0.7 times out of 5? I want the AI team every day, right? So yeah, I find that study really interesting. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to anyone. If you're going to listen to one human when it comes to AI, it should be this guy. Dario Modi created ChatGPT whilst working at OpenAI. He and Sam Altman had a huge fight. In fact, they were not on speaking terms when ChatGPT was released. Dario went off and founded a little firm called Anthropic and started it as an AI safety lab just to keep tabs on Sam. He eventually then released Claude, a model, and fast forward to today, Anthropic and Claude is now the leading AI tool in the business world. Oh, hang on. I shouldn't have advanced. So what Dario says And he's the only one who's telling the truth. He says AI could wipe out half of all entry white-collar jobs, spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years. Most people are unaware this is about to happen. It sounds crazy, and people just don't believe it. It's not crazy. You should believe it. It really is. That sort of change is upon us. And let's look at why. Let's talk about Joe. Joe here is a junior partner at a law firm or an accounting firm or Accenture or whatever. So he's expensive. He's got expensive degrees. It's costing his boss $200,000-300,000 a year. He's not adored by his team, and he's not a rainmaker. He's in real trouble, right? And if we look at what Joe does in a week, so if we divide the 40 hours of labor his boss buys from him and sort of put it on a grid, he prepares and delivers presentations like this. He sends and responds to emails. He analyzes data. He does research with company proprietary documents. He does research on the internet. He holds meetings with humans. He designs programs of work and plans. Well, at least 50% of that work can right now be done by AI agents better than Joe can. Yeah, it's wild, right? So slides, AI can do much better slides in about 10% of the time. Email, AI does a wonderful job at triaging and crunching and analyzing emails, even complex ones. Data, unless Joe is like in the top 1% of data guys, AI crushes him. I'll show you a demo a little bit later from, like, I have a data scientist who works for me as a real life example of number 3. Research, AI just crushes humans when it comes to research, whether it's proprietary information internally, which, by the way, that's hard to do. You've got to have the right AI platform wired up to all your systems, and meetings. So AI agents can't run meetings yet, but they can certainly participate, notate, analyze meetings. But if you take me at my word and AI can do half of what Joe does, then the economics for Joe's employer is this. I only need 20 hours of Joe's time now, right? And that's today. And AI today is the worst it'll ever be. If I've got 50 Joes in my company, I don't need 50 Joes anymore, right? And what I'm not saying is that AI should do the entire job. It does not need to. If AI just takes 50% of the work of a senior professional, all of a sudden you don't need as many of those senior professionals. And that's Joe on the left, by the way, not using AI. But let me show you the economics behind this. So this is modeled on a real client of ours, obviously anonymized, but it's similar to the Joe thing. Here's Joe in the middle, right? He's row 10. And in this firm, 73 heads, roughly 20 people of Joe's rank. So, junior partner for Thing X, each costing about 200,000. This has obviously been generalized for the purpose of the slide. But the key point here is that even though this mid rank is only 27% of the headcount of this company, 58% of the cost that this company incurs. In this company, there were no COGS. Their biggest expense by far was payroll. It was a human services business, right? So payroll was 80% of their OPEX. 58% of it was going to this mid-level rank. Now, at that particular company, using Sapience, they have gutted this row. And what many AI consultants will tell you is to focus on the bottom, focus on AI-ifying junior roles. And that's dumb for 2 different reasons. Number one, junior roles are generally cheap. So you have to get rid of a lot of them for it to add up to real money. Number 2, junior roles are necessarily odd jobs, right? So there are not big slabs of work you can AIify down the bottom here that will reclaim back material dollars. Whereas in the middle of your cost sheet, and this is ranked from CEO at the top, most expensive, to junior burgers at the bottom, least expensive. It's in the middle of your corporate tree where it's a huge sinkhole of cost and AI can be deployed very, very effectively. And so if we just take the 50% heuristic, we're going to use AI to get back 20 hours of work per week for each of these humans. Terrific, right? I can collapse this $4 million spend to $2 million spend. And in this case, that cost the business about 250 grand. So they spend 250 grand and they get back 2 million a year forever, right? You just can't argue with the economics of this, and it's why it's coming for every single knowledge category. How are we doing for time? Look, I'm probably gonna leave the slides there and jump over and show you some things, just in the interests of time. So let me show you what I'm talking about, like in real life. Okay. So we played a fun little game. I wanted to make this webinar interesting for the people in the audience. Now, for those of you in the audience, some of you might find this creepy, but you should know that this is what lots of companies are doing and can do. We asked Sapience to go and look at the people who had confirmed for this webinar. So we got way more people on the line than confirmed, but this analysis was done on who confirmed. We quickly found out we had 5 founders and CEOs, 3 head ofs, 2 C-suites, and a chairman. All right, that's pretty interesting. So this is on the webinar right now. So it's identified some priority profiles. Michael, if you're listening, this is what it was able to find out about you. Ben, if you're listening, this is what it was able to find out about you. Sean, Novak, similarly, right? Now, I'm not going to dwell on this, but this took about 5 minutes of work to do. How would you do this with humans? This is not an example of something you could do by hand. That's just an example of something you couldn't otherwise do. Like, how could a human team possibly know all of that about people that come into this webinar the morning of the webinar? It's just insane. So here I am in Sapience. Now, Sapience is a useful tool because it represents a real world application of all the cutting edge theory, right? So that's why we're demoing this. Also, I own the company, so I know the product very, very well. And it's easy for me to sort of demo concepts for you. And so here I'm in Sapience. It's very different to, say, a ChatGPT, right? Well, let me actually launch the platform to it. I think that will help. So Sapience is built around these sort of core concepts: agents, notes, files, projects. And we've added a 5th to this, which is meetings, right? Because those are the things that executives spend their time on. And Sapience is AI for executives. And, what Sapience does is sort of gives you a team of digital employees. I might actually pop over to the website, which showing you our website's a bit odd, but the reason it's cool is that Sapience built this. Not only did it come up with the positioning, but it wrote the code, right? So it does a better job of selling itself than I do of selling it. So Sapience gives you the best AI tech from all the vendors, rather than having spending $400 a month on a ChatGPT Enterprise subscription, $400 a month on Claude Max Plan, and on and on. You buy Sapience, you get all of the best tech from all of those vendors. So it builds on the shoulders of giants, and good agentic systems should do that, right? Sapience is being used by Fortune 500 companies, by governments, all the way down to tiny little teams. It's built with sort of the highest levels of security there are, built in from ground zero. So you never hear about AI companies talking about security. I spent my career in the cyber industry from a software perspective, and so Sapience is built to the NIST CSF2 standard, which is what is required to supply the Pentagon, which my previous company did in fact do. So it's built to the highest standards of cybersecurity. It gives you agents that work while you sleep. I talked about this. And then this sort of whole digital workforce, right? So you're one person. Most of the names I can see here are men. So you're one guy. But all of a sudden you can have a swarm of digital employees at your beck and call who are better than you at key things, right? It's the ultimate superpower. And then it's got a whole file system, so it replaces Dropbox and Google Drive. It's got a whole Office suite built into it, get rid of Word, Notion, Evernote. It's got a terrific project management system, which we'll look at. And that's mainly useful, not I mean, it's great for coordinating humans, but it's also terrific because you can delegate work to an AI agent. And then lastly, it connects to 200 different systems. So if you're running SAP internally, Oracle, Salesforce, whatever, Sapience can plumb into pretty much any of those. But let me just show you some things that I sort of did this morning. Right. So here's that webinar prep conversation I was talking about, ultimately with, this may actually be a different spin on yeah, there's an animated version. So know your audience. So going back to doing things that humans can't do, I cannot create animated presentations. So Andrew, I think, yes, you are on. Andrew, and let me try something. And I'm going to try and unmute you. You can talk now if you want to. You may still be muted on your end, but I'd be curious to hear from you what you think of this slide.
It looks pretty good.
How are you, mate?
Mate, I'm well, thank you.
Excellent. Everybody, Andrew Jetson. And as you can see on screen, he runs a group of CEOs for Vistage in Sydney. He's a very experienced executive himself. And I could not have created this slide about Andrew, even though I know Andrew, spent time with Andrew, I certainly couldn't build this, right? So it's cool that he's in the audience live, and it's cool that we had something here for him. And so, Andrew, feel free to, do you actually, while I've got you, mate, do you have any questions or areas that you'd like me to explore?
Not particularly, but I do want to talk to you separately
Sure.
about one of the guys that was at the group meeting that you presented at. So,
Sure. I'll give you a call later.
yep, sounds good.
Okay. So here we have Sean Sanson from Mervac. So this is, you get the idea. So what else can I show you? Well, I think the first thing to show you is this, that with Sapience, when you send new conversation, you don't just get a chat box, right? Where you type in a message like you do with ChatGPT. First thing you get with Sapience is sort of this whole library of agents. And so the first thing you got to do is choose who you want to work with. So this is a little bit like, if you're the CEO of a company and you need something done, you think for half a second before you pick up the phone and figure out who you're going to call. This is like that moment. So, I'm doing some legal questions. I want to fire an employee in an exotic jurisdiction. I want to know the HR rules. Great. I'm going to call my legal research agent. Or I want to do the thing I was doing before. I want to find everything out, digitally stalk some various humans. I'm going to use the sales development agent or BDM. Right? I used to have a whole team of people who did this, who I could say, I'm meeting with Andrew Jetson next week. Can you make me smart on Andrew? If, let's say, I'm analyzing some financial data, okay, I would fire up the stock market agent. Equally, I might do, if I'm doing data analysis, I'd use the data analysis agent. But let's have a look at, say, what the stock agent can do. I'm going to have to reload. Okay, we'll do it again. So this is timed out because I did this before the session. But let's just do it live. So I'm going to say charts timed out. Can you give me the so here I am talking to an agent, okay, and it is a stock market analyst agent. So going back to those 13 criteria before, this is a task-specific product expert agent, right? So it's better than me at what it does. And I could go in, I could see, all right, it's built on Anthropic technology. It's using Claude Sonnet 4.6. It is the 13,000 agent that was created on Sapience. Sometimes we get questions about how many users do we have? Well, there are at least 13,000 agents on Sapience. It's got all of these different skills, right? So we talked about this before. It can send an email, generate image. It can read images, so it can look at a whiteboard. It can handle files. Can do all this stuff. And this is where the rubber hits the road. This is the difference between ChatGPT and enterprise agentic systems, right? This thing is wired into proprietary data streams that we pay money for that you probably don't have access to. It's then got all of these tools, which is AI speak for traditional bits of code and tech that the AI agents can leverage. And then it has these skills. So I asked it to get Micron's stock price for the last 12 months and chart it for me. Okay. And then I asked it to get it not just stock price, but also volumes and open and close prices for the last 1 month and give me a candlestick view. And it gave it to me. I can zoom in on these and manipulate these. It's just doing this on the fly. Now, I pay, I trade equities quite frequently. So I pay a lot of money for other systems that do a worse job of helping me analyze stocks than this agent does, which just comes out of the box in Sapience. Which is kind of staggering. Now, let me show you some other things. There's one in here I want to find, this one. So some of you might have seen this before, and if so, apologies. But it's a staggering example. There's a guy on the line. His name's Brian. He works for me. I hired him because he's a data engineer, he's a data scientist, a visualizations guru, probably one of the best data guys I've ever worked with, actually. So there you go, Brian. Pat on the back for you, mate. And 2 years ago, if I wanted visualizations, I would have just called Brian. Fast forward to 6 months ago when I created this. And so I was on a call with a client of our CEO, big management consulting firm, and we were analyzing 1 million different data points from their history, 30 years of history, right? 50,000 organizations involved in the data set. And I asked Sapience to do a whole bunch of manipulation, transformation on the data, and give me a 3D visualization on these 3 vectors: direction, execution, and results. Now that's important because that was not in the data set. So Sapience had to write code, create files, do a whole bunch of work, right, to actually come up with what even that is. So it had to reason and plan and act. And it spat out this visualization because I'd asked it for a 3D visualization. And Russell and I were both overjoyed that it had come up with something, given how hard that was. And then Russell said, God, it'd be so cool if you could interact with that. And I said, yeah, if only I could just drag my mouse. And then both of us were speechless. And we've known each other a long time, Russ and I. Were speechless. And then we were giddy as schoolgirls to discover that he had in fact built an interactive 3D model where we could hover over a data point and zoom in and manipulate it and zoom out. And just that view there, floating up above the data and looking down upon it, led him to launch a whole new sort of service offering, discovering how closely bounded these businesses were in the Z-axis, right? So this is not just a cool demo. This is an example of number crunching and analysis and insight provision to leaders that cause change in corporate behavior and real revenue, right? And I then asked Brian, who's listening, Brian, how long would it have taken you to build this? Long pause. And he came back and said, never. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, I could not build that. I'll give you a similar vignette. So last week I gave a workshop to one of Australia's leading vitamin manufacturers. And at 11:50 the night before, on my couch, I built one of those animated slide decks I showed you earlier. One of the people in the workshop was their web designer. And I asked him how long it would have taken him to do. And he, we went back and forth, and he ended up sort of saying 8 hours without the animation. I was like, right, it took me 4 minutes. And then I shared with the same company a whole bunch of sort of data slides like this that Brian, the human, had created using our data analyst agent. And they were terrific. In fact, the AI identified a bug in one of their core reports, which they've been relying upon. Anyway, I asked Brian on that one, how long would it have taken you the old way? And he's like, 4 days at least. I was like, okay, probably more likely a week, but let's call it 4 days. And it only took him 4 hours to do using these tools. So there's a 4-day to 4-hour example, and also an 8-hour to 5 minutes example, right? And those are different because in my case, it's Ken being enabled to do things Ken can't do, I can't do good design, certainly not animated slides. In Brian's case, it's a super expert just doing what he already does, but dramatically faster, right? So let's go all the way back to my argument that Joe's employer only needs half as many Joes. And let's take the Brian example, right? So 4 work days, 32 hours, and he did it in 4. Yeah? So that's an 8x collapse. So that is not the AI doing half the work. That is Brian doing 12.5% of the work. I hope my math is right. I think it is. And the AI doing whatever the net of that is, right? I was doing 80, so let's just call it 12 and 88%. It's nothing close to a 50% collapse. And this is why I said earlier that Joe's in trouble and Joe's business doesn't need 20 Joes. They need vastly fewer. They need a few Joes left to supervise the output of a swarm of agents and to take the work that last mile, right? So look, that's probably the end of the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions. We don't have any questions in the Q&A tool though, but please, anybody who's on, feel free to ask any question you like in the Q&A tool. And equally, what I'll do is if you're interested in talking to us, talking to me, talking to the team, getting access to Sapience, any of these things, just reach out. So I'm gonna let me find the slide with our contact information on it. Well, one of these will have it. Sorry, folks, I should have had this prep, shouldn't I? Here we go. What I'll do is I'll just put this on the screen. And look, happy to answer any questions that anyone's got. Otherwise, okay, good. We've got a question that's coming here from Ed. Here, folks, there's my email address. Let me just make that white. I don't know why it's so you can read it. Okay, there we go. So reach out if you'd like to, you want to talk to me, my team, would like to play with Sapience. Question here from Ed. Can I move my ChatGPT and Claude projects into Sapience without loss of data and progress? Sort of, not really, depends. Depends on what you're doing. You can definitely export data and transcripts out of ChatGPT and load that into Sapience, and that's easy and well supported. Similarly with Claude, with Claude projects are really just a folder full of chats. So it depends how deep you've gone on that. But I would say 80% yes is how I'd characterize that, right? I think what you'd find though is you actually don't want to bring over everything from ChatGPT. There's probably a bunch of garbage in there. So you probably want to cherry pick what you would bring across. And then an extension of your question is like, well, let's generalize Ed's question. How do I get the stuff that matters to me into Sapience? In this case, Ed cares about ChatGPT. The answer is it depends. Okay, we support 200 different systems in terms of wiring them up and integrating with them. And the answer is different, for every single system. So, some of them we have live connections, like we use HubSpot, so Sapience can just talk to HubSpot live, same with vTiger and Salesforce and others. Some things like ChatGPT, we don't have a live connector, so that's just a matter of doing export import. But Sapience handles 5,000 different file types. Question here from Ben. No doubt, Sapience has its own proprietary approach, building its agents, having memory, knowledge graphs, etc. Outside of that, I see broader development improvements in agent memory. I've been building a fair amount myself in my own time, currently exploring knowledge graphs, etc. Build a more sophisticated agent than I've built to date. Ben, great question, deep question. We could talk about that for 4 hours. Maybe shoot me a note, lay out what you're doing. Maybe using Sapiences of interest to you. Memory's tough in agent land. Sapience uses 4 different memory systems under the hood, and they're layered. And if you're trying to build that yourself, you have no chance. We've invested many, many millions of dollars into Sapience. Yeah, getting memory right is very, very hard. There's no off-the-shelf solution. Memory is one of these wrinkly areas where if you get it wrong, agent's dumb. If you get it right but too much, agent's dumb. And yeah, it's dicey. So in Sapience, we have this 4-tiered structure and sort of very finely tuned algorithms about when we use different types of memory and for what different purposes. You say, I know. Yeah, okay. So look, maybe we should chat. It's probably what I'd say there. As I said, we could talk about this for 4 hours. But for everyone else in line, this is interesting, right? People just assume that AI remembers stuff, but it doesn't. All AI does is sentence completion. Mary had a little lamb, right? And you have to wrap it in this sort of this super harness to make it useful. One of the things you have to wrap it with is memory. But memory is finite, and there's 100 different tricks and pitfalls and gotchas when it comes to agentic memory. Memory in Sapience is wonderful because of those 4 layers and your ability to manage it and nuke it if you need to, or edit memories, etc. So we sort of give our users all the knobs and dials on memory if they want them, but we also just streamline it all in the case where most users don't want to muck around with this. All right, folks. Well, we're at the hour. Oh, there's one more question that's come in. Ben again asking about how Sapience interacts with the governance topic. Yep, sort of risk management. Yeah, so Ben, shoot us an email, right? Email's there on screen, and we find a time to talk. Let's let me undo that. Extend that off to anybody else on the line as well. All right, folks, we're at the hour. Thanks for your time today. I hope it's been useful. Hope you come back to one in the future, and have a terrific rest of your day or rest of your evening, depending on where in the world you are. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.